maybe the point there is that the U.S. government kind of thrives on fear.
Well, sometimes, yeah.
Well,
yeah,
I mean, they achieve a lot. They achieve a lot.
The fear of their power. Like the police.
Well, not just the fear of their power, but look what I mean. He mentioned fear of Muslims
right.
at one point there. Obviously, the fear of Muslims has been deliberately manipulated into the American mind and into the Western civilization, the mind of Western civilization, and it's a completely false fear. But they do it for a specific reason. So I mean, it seems to me that if like getting back to what you were saying earlier on, Jason, that the government doesn't want to take your guns away. It wants people to have guns. It doesn't really matter to them. If they have to choose, they'll choose let people have guns, because if this caller was right, if Donnie, if that's his name, was right, then if that serves to increase the atmosphere of fear in the USA, well then that's simply going to lead people to be more dependent on the authorities to protect them. And that's what the government wants. Ultimately, the government wants people to remember, like as we said last week, to remember why they need us, right? So, I mean, sure, he's talking about an ideal world type of thing where there is no fear and everybody lives in peace and hope and stuff, but
for the average American, it's not even specifically white Americans. It's kind of more like middle-class Americans, and a lot of people who, have come from countries that were very bad in consideration to what it's like for when they come into the U.S., that actually life can be pretty good in America. So you have a really hard time arguing these things to people who haven't lived in abject poverty. I mean, I lived, for the first, 8 years of my life in very abject poverty. So I've been on the other side of the tracks, and I know kind of like what it's like to be there. And for most people, America is actually kind of good, because America has the illusion of wealth. I mean, it's not real wealth, it's fake wealth in a certain sense. It's wealth that keeps you occupied so that you never do anything meaningful in life, right? So nobody in America really builds like giant cathedrals or big statues. No one's dragging around giant stones like they apparently claim that you do, whatever. No one's building no one's doing anything great. There's no heroes in America in a certain sense. There's no Hercules. There's nothing like this. And to maintain this, you have to give people enough sustenance to just kind of live. So they have this whole debt where they have a nice car and TV, and they buy their iPhone, and they do all this different stuff. They don't actually own those things.
Yeah, they do it all on credit.
They do it all on credit. They don't actually own those things. So it's not really wealth, but it's the illusion of wealth, because for them, functionally, it's the same thing. Before, they lived their lives as peasants in poverty, and there was an aristocratic high class that was very decadent and closed off, and everyone was very a wide base beneath them. There was no kind of like middle class. And then they said, well, this really sucks. And then they came up, and now everything's more equally distributed in the sense of this idea of wealth, which is really just debt. And you don't really have wealth. You don't have anything. And it just keeps you from doing anything worthwhile and important. Yeah, in a certain sense, it's basically society has started to exist simply to continue its existence, and that's a fair way to operate in a certain sense. From a government's perspective, they want to maintain their power in the way that they do things, and they want to maintain the status quo. And most of the people in the country want to do the same. So for them, the way the world is right now today is good. And if the government wants to go off to some other country and take oil or kill people, and it's going to filter back to you, it's out of sight, out of mind. I don't care that there's, 7.6 million children dying every year all over the world, and 5.5 million of those are from treatable diseases, and all the people starving in the world and all this violence and stuff like that. I don't care that my government may be involved in setting up banana republics and regimes just so that they can go and knock them down and take their resources. Maybe that's happening, maybe not. But they don't care, because it doesn't really affect you.
But at the same time, there is an underclass in the U.S., no?
There is
that aren't
happy
with their life.
Absolutely, and that is where the tyranny of America comes in. It's in the low classes, the poor classes, the sort of the strong legs and back of the society that are just there to sort of like, work and work and work. The working class.
But at the same time, even those people buy into the kind of American dream.
That's the thing. I don't really think so. I mean,
I actually have a clip here of that kind of maybe illustrates the point. At least it illustrated the point for me. Right. And it's a clip from America's favorite president of all time, George W. Bush.
Who said he's America's favorite?
I did.
I love George Bush.
From 2005, when he was talking at a town hall meeting in Omaha, Nebraska, and a woman in the audience asked a question. We don't actually have the specific question, but here's her comments, and here's what Bush responded.
There's a certain comfort to know that the promises made will be kept by the government. You don't have to worry.
That's good, because I work 3 jobs, and I feel like I contribute.
You work 3 jobs?
3 jobs, yes.
Uniquely American, isn't it? I mean, that is fantastic that you're doing that.
I mean, okay.
You get any sleep?
There's the clincher,
Get any sleep?
Get any sleep?
The thing is,
ha. But for me, what I was getting from her point there was that she was kind of conflicted in the fact that the facts of her life were that she's a single mother, and she was having to work 3 jobs, probably at basic wage, and she could barely cover her expenses. And as Bush very perceptively noted, was that she does, because I think afterwards she says, no, I don't get any sleep actually, But when he said it's uniquely American, and she said people applauded. The whole audience applauded. This was uniquely American, that a single mother has to work 3 jobs at a menial wage just to make ends meet, and she doesn't really make ends meet, and that this is her contribution to America, and she's happy. She's meant to be happy with that. That's uniquely American. That's the American dream. And so on the one hand, there's the facts of her life, which are probably pretty dire, pretty dismal. She's not having a good life, but at the same time, she's being encouraged, and the whole audience believes that this is somehow good. And I think that's just one example of this American dream, where people, even when they are marginalized socially and impoverished and basically ignored by the powers that be, they're under this intense pressure to believe that they have the best of the best, basically, And that, for me, that kind of ultimately it's a kind of pressure cooker. People are eventually going to, maybe if that continues, people are eventually going to.
I mean, the problem is like, in order to understand any of these things, I mean, you have to go so wide into so many different topics like psychology. Here, you have to understand, kind of like not just the psychopath, but even kind of like the sort of the spirit of meanness that exists in the middle classes, the almost kind of desire to torture, kind of like the torturing an animal type of thing. That the most enjoyment for them comes from not just the idea of the oppressed, but the oppressed being happy with it in a certain sense. Mm-hmm. They want you to ask more punishment type of thing. This is the way that they think, and Bush, being extremely psychopathic, would naturally make that kind of comment. And we got what? Oh yeah, so I'm sorry. I'm
we got a call. I'm not being a good. I'm not keeping up with these calls here. We got a call from a while ago. Hi, caller. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Hi. What's your name?
Hi, this is Genevieve.
Hi, Genevieve. Where are you calling from?
I'm actually calling from the United States.
Well, what part of the United States? I'm actually from there.
Indianapolis, Indiana.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome here.
Big old red state.
Yeah.
So you got a question or comment?
Well, the comment that I wanted to make really about the gun control issue is that I have a hard time with it, because in reading the newspapers, which I do on occasion, and watching any sort of mainstream media, the whole idea of gun control to me just further divides humanity.
100%.
Yeah.
I think it's purposefully done to divide the masses. I guess that's the point that I wanted to stress, because there are so many people out there that still are either one way or the other, or are very worried about our guns being taken away when all of our other rights are being stripped away, and those aren't being talked about.
Amen. 100%. I mean,
absolutely.
She's cut right to the issue that we've kind of been dancing around up until this point, which is that, people are arguing about the Second Amendment right, But in the end, I mean, they have extraordinary rendition. They have now legislated the right to be able to arrest and detain without trial.
The NDAA,
yeah, any person, to execute them in some cases, to torture them. You're no longer allowed to make protests. They've declared that low-level terrorism, and which is a violation of your First Amendment right to gather together and petition your government for redress and things like that. So
even your right to private property. I mean, eminent domain.
Yeah, well, eminent domain's always been a problem in the U.S. I mean, it's always been kind of creeping in the back of a lot of libertarian and type of people, pointing out that you've never really had the right to property in the U.S. And when everything's mortgaged, you don't have the right to property anyway.
The
so
banks
it's a moot point,
Yeah.
So contractually giving it away.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, that is something we were, Genevieve. That's something we were hoping to get into, which was the idea that basically this whole gun control debate is, like you said, an attempt at divide and conquer, and it's a redirection. It's a redirection of the real issue, which is it's directing the issue towards kind of like saying this is a social problem that all you Americans need to deal with. It's your problem, when in fact the frustration and anger, justified frustration and anger of the American people should be directed at their corrupt leaders.
Correct. Yes, I apologize for jumping the gun there.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
We're so happy you called.
No pun intended, but yes,
jumping the gun.
Yes, as far as a diversionary tactic, yes, it is, and it's quite frustrating to be able to see it for what it is, and
it's extremely important. It's extremely important that you do see it,
Well, if people could become as passionate about all the other rights that have been stripped away instead of the right to bear arms, then maybe we might actually be heading somewhere more positive or more hopeful.
Absolutely.
So
more
thank
useful.
Thank you for taking my call.
No problem.
Thank you for calling.
Thanks for calling in.
Right.
You have a good night. You keep
too.
Indiana
Thanks for the show,
safe.
guys.
All right.
Take
All
care.
right.
Bye.
Thanks for the show. Bye-bye.
We're going to go to another call here, actually, because he's been waiting for a while.
All right, yeah, okay. Pull him up.
He or she. Hello, caller. Can you hear us?
Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Hello.
Jason.
Hi,
Neal,
what's your
Joe.
name?
Betsy,
Hi, Betsy. Betsy, where are you calling from?
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
You're very welcome, Betsy.
I just called to bring up a point of firearms are practically the only way a woman has of protecting herself against rape.
Yeah.
It's a horrible thing to say, but rape is a very prevalent crime in the United States, and the police are not there until it's over with.
Yeah. Because we were actually, this is another caller who's jumping the gun, because one of the big things that we were going to cart out is this talking about, and in many of the societies that ban guns, the drop in shooting deaths gets spread out, and one of the ways that it gets spread out actually into things like rape, burglary, and vicious assaults, so that they don't have so many shooting deaths, but now they have more women being raped, or at least a proportionate number of women being raped to the U.S., even though they have a population 5 times less, which is insulting. Like in Britain, where the rape rate of women in Britain, even though it's got 5 times less the population, is like right on par with us, and their violent crime and burglary is higher than ours.
Sure.
So, and I think Penn Jillette from the Penn and Teller Group